No one spoke of Ergoton anymore. Not above a whisper. Not in daylight. Not unless they'd forgotten how silence could listen back. It lay nestled in the heart of Kinvalira, tucked deep into the folds of the Aphalacran mountain range, where the ridgelines crawled like roots through old earth, and trees grew too thick for wind to pass between them. Paths here didn't lead anywhere. They looped. Even the deer stopped leaving tracks. Ergoton wasn't forgotten. It was left alone. The fog didn't drift here. It rose. Heavy, warm, metallic. It clung low to the ground and wrapped around ankles like something searching. The buildings leaned in, their shutters closed too tight, their chimneys long silent. You could hear the town breathing if you stood still long enough, not through lungs, but through walls. The air held its own kind of gravity. Even sound obeyed it. What little remained of the cobbled streets had long since surrendered to moss and vine. But the vines moved. Not fast, just often. They twitched when you weren't looking, pulled back when firelight got too close. The forest didn't reclaim Ergoton. It allowed it to remain, just barely, as a kind of exhibit. And deeper still, where Aphalacran's tree line grew too dense for light to keep its shape. There stood a structure that had no reason to exist. It hadn't been built, not truly. It had accumulated, rising in spires and angles that cut through the treetops. The mansion at the edge of the grove was a wound in the forest's rhythm. Its windows reflected nothing. Its doors never opened, but things inside left. You could see them sometimes, glimpses between trees, too thin, too smooth, too quiet. Locals never named it. Not because they didn't believe in it, because they did. Inside walls that creaked without wind, staircases that bent when no one stepped, candles that burned with colorless flame. The wood had never been carved, it had bled into place. And in the heart of it, in a room no blueprint could diagram, he waited. He had once been a man, but that had dried out of him long ago. Now there was only Malikar, a shape in the smoke, a thought that refused to forget itself. He didn't walk. He didn't sleep. He suspended, draped across dimensions like a wet cloth, dripping presence. He had touched something he shouldn't have. Or maybe it had touched him. Either way, his eyes no longer searched. They collected. He saw the threads now. The thin lines where worlds frayed. He traced them through maps no longer printed on paper, through corridors etched in ash and memory. The mansion had become his vessel. Each room a function, each breath an invocation. In one chamber, glass pillars that pulsed in slow rhythm, with a void-born frequency. They rang when names were spoken in certain patterns. Another held books that wrote themselves backward, sealing knowledge behind the language of nightmares. The lowest chamber, the one that sank beneath the ground without tunneling, held the shard. A remnant, a wound. It pulsed in silence, and in that silence, Malikar listened. It fed him, bound him, defined him. He wanted more. Not of the shard, but of the world between the shards. What had once shattered must be found again. And outside, in the still woods of Aphalacran, the air had begun to carry a new note. Not wind, not weather, just pressure. Something beneath the surface of Kinvalera was listening back.